Well, independence is sweeping the nation. Not the type of independence you think of wherein you want to say a part of the nation wants to break away from Washington, D.C. or the federal government. But independence is sweeping the nation because more and more people are moving away from the Republican and Democratic parties both. Most people are now totally disgusted with the Clinton and Bush cartels. It's like, what kind of choice are we going to have for the next election? Is it going to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton? Is that a choice? And beware, because this actually led to Woodrow Wilson way back when there was an independence movement for, Teddy Roosevelt, of the Rough Rider fame, charging up San Juan Hill. And it was Taft that was always going to oppose the Federal Reserve System, so they needed to split the vote with Taft, and they used Teddy Roosevelt to do so. So beware, if we have an independence movement, we might get outmaneuvered. But throughout the nation, there seems to be, not just seems to be, it's actually statistically known now that in almost every state, 44 of 50 states, there are more people that consider themselves independents than Republicans or Democrats. And of the 6 states that are left that where you actually have one of the major political party affiliations that are left, where they consider themselves to belong to one of the major party affiliations, which is be Democrat or Republican, you'd have Delaware, Maryland, Mississippi, New York, Pennsylvania, and Wyoming. Wyoming's the only one where you actually have more Republicans. It would be, number one. But in all those other states, it's like if they have a party affiliation. In other words, the other 5 states that actually say they go to a party affiliation, Democrat would be first, but number 2 would be independent. Number 3 would be Republican. So, but in 44 out of 50 states, more people are identifying themselves as independent. And some of the ones that are really very strong in that area is like, and you could kind of figure who they would be Alaska, Massachusetts actually consider themselves to be more independent with 53%. Alaska, 54%. They consider themselves independent. Idaho, 51%. And I think Maine is like 53%. And Montana is around 50-something percent, too. You can kind of figure who it would be. But independence is actually sweeping the nation. But, this is kind of a dangerous thing in some ways because the elite, well, whatever it is, the political maneuverers, I could say they always have a way around, making something happen whereby the outcome comes out against the independent people because they're divided. One thing I've always thought was, boy, I know people would get mad at me for this maybe, but, they used to get mad at me, maybe less so now. But I used to think that Ron Paul was a diversion. He talked a lot to talk, but he never actually followed through, especially when he was running in the primaries. He never really fought, even when he was totally flat out cheated in the primaries. And I was thinking, he basically threw his vote over to Romney, He was a Republican cheerleader, basically, that was appeasing the grumbling crowd of independents. That's really what it is. That's what it is. But, to be independent and free, it's almost like the days of, this is where I always have to look at it. What happened during Prohibition? Did anybody listen to the stupid rules? Maybe that's really what you got to do. It's like you can't be anti-American. You can't say, I want to split up, and that thus be weaker. But you could say, to hell with the draconian stupid rules. I mean, you really can't advertise, what rules you're going to break. But you could say, to hell with the draconian stupid rules. And I think most people do this. And most people do this throughout the freaking globe because, it's totalitarian everywhere, every country you go into. Now, even in the United States, we got more freedoms than anywhere, but they're getting taken away piecemeal. Actually, during the 1776 Declaration of Independence, and, this would have been our flag. This would have actually been our flag, the Grand Union. Something a little more in common with the way Britain looks. not a bad looking flag either, but I would not change things because somehow when you change something, that gives them room for the yo-yos to move in there and play games. But one thing we always had here in the United States too is our British roots. I know a lot of times people look at that as a flaw, but if you look at the trial by jury and the signing of the Magna Carta and the limiting of the powers of the king, those were hard-fought battles that happened in the UK long before the United States was colonized. So it's been a battle that's been going on a long time for humanity. But what we see today, though, is a sweeping movement for independence. It's actually statistically out there. In 44 out of 50 states, more people identify themselves as independents. And of the 6 states that are remaining, it's like, you might have 5 out of 6 that are Democrat. They're more Democrat than independent, but independent is number 2. And in Alaska, it's more Republican than independent or Democrat, but independent is number 2. And in all those 6 states where independent is number 1, the other party, the opposing party, main party, is last. So even of the 6 states where they don't identify themselves as mainly independent, there's still an underlying disgust of, the status quo that's going on. And we could see this with the Clinton-Bush cartel. This is ridiculous. You got Herbert Walker Bush, then son Bush, then Jeb Bush brother. What the hell is this crap? That's royalty. Then you got Clinton, with the adopted senator from New York, Secretary of State. What the hell? One of the most dishonest people going, even amongst politicians. Running for, and then selling out women left and right by taking campaign contributions from places that beat women to death as a practically leisure time, like Saudi Arabia. Policies of the royal family, right? Boy, is she gonna freaking look out for the middle class. Oh boy. I don't know how people are freaking getting fooled by this, but I guess people aren't, because people are actually realizing independence is the way to go. They don't want it. They're disgusted with both parties. So people really do have this thought where both parties are both joined at the hip and they're both working for the big money. And this is something else I want to point out to you, that political candidates that the elite choose, the reason they choose them is because they deliver for the elite themselves. You think, the propaganda will be out there. Oh, yeah, they've got this support and that support from that group, and somebody writes this and somebody writes that. I'm totally independent. I'm not writing nothing good about the Bushes or Clintons. Actually, I might write a little bit good about Bill Clinton, because I think on a personal level, he's a pretty good guy, as long as he, I would, if Hillary Clinton had 6 weeks to live after the election and Bill Clinton was the VP, and she croaked, I might go with that. You know what I mean? Then he wouldn't have to worry about a wife, I mean, that's about the only thing. I'm just kidding on that. But, in some ways, man, the guy's looking good compared to Obama, man. I used to think he looked good compared to Carter. Now, you can see I lean a little bit towards Republican, but, I get totally disgusted with conservatives, too, because, our nation was founded upon laissez-faire capitalism and freedom. I even noticed that in the states where they talk about they have the most independence, I was wondering if they were like really staunch Bible states. I noticed that was mainly down south. I was looking at some of the statistics because, I was looking at the issue of these same-sex marriages and stuff. Now, I'm not somebody that wants to be a same-sex marriage or anything, but I'm saying is that the people that are in the states that have the most independence, like Montana, Maine, and stuff, they got a very high percentage where they think it's the right of the person to have the same-sex marriage, even though they're not saying they want to have a same-sex marriage themselves. In other words, they have this independent streak where, whether I agree with you or not, you could do whatever the hell you want. And that's okay, because, I don't like where you get into this conservatism where, quote unquote, and they try to force their way of thinking on people. And in some ways I'm against that, because even in the Southern Bible Belt, they're pretty restrictive on certain things. And, the Constitution basically, like, in other words, I'm not against religion or saying I'm for religion. That's a personal choice. The government itself is to stay the hell out of it, not push religion onto people, nor restrict the freedom of exercise of a religion in the least. And I noticed it was kind of weird that, I didn't really think it was, at first I thought it was weird. At first I was thinking, well, like Montana and Maine are very conservative in some ways, in Wyoming, but they're very, very independent. But they also advocated that, they didn't come out and say they wanted gay marriage or same-sex marriage or lesbian marriage or whatever the hell it was. They said that it should be legal and up to the choice of the individual. And that's kind of how I look at it, because, it's almost like when you get too conservative, it's wrong the other way. It's wrong the other way. If you get too conservative, you're tearing up the Constitution the other way. The Constitution is about protecting the rights of individuals. It's not about mandating morality. It's about protecting the rights of individuals. As long as you don't infringe the rights of other people, you can do what you want. The whole key is, do not infringe the rights of other people or destroy other people's property or, defame other people in other ways or whatever it is. Unless they're freaking running for office, we could defame them all they want because they're big fat targets. That's the way I look at it. But, that's the way I look at it. So, I don't know. I guess I have a real I probably fit in really good with the Montana, Maine, and Wyoming mindset more than anybody, to tell you the truth, because I get disgusted with, I kind of lean conservative, but I get disgusted when conservatives try to mandate, something, or too much one way. Like, and in some ways, I kind of like Bill Clinton in some ways. The only thing I really burned me up about that yo-yo was that he sold us out down the freaking river when he sold missile technology to China, for one. And I know there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Believe me, I'm very well versed on it. You can see one of my videos I put out about the Clinton body bag murders or whatever the hell it is. There's a whole pile of suspicious deaths around him. But I don't know if it was exactly him or it's, the whole just apparatus that's around this kind of garbage. On a one-to-one basis, I think old Bill was okay. And that's kind of, that's saying a lot from a person that basically always votes Republican. I always do, or independent. I never vote Democrat ever. Never. I voted for him, but I don't think that guy's that bad. So it's like in some ways, being very honest on here, because I realize that the conservatives go way too far. They try to mandate religion. And the Constitution makes the most sense to me, even if there was no Constitution. I think that's the way it should be anyway. You don't prohibit religion. You don't freaking make people say you can't do this in school. You can't have any mention of God or anything in school or anything like that. And at the same time, you don't force it on people either. Right? But it looks like, the nation, even though we got problems and we're taking a lot of shots from the elite and the control freaks, in many instances, the nation has been moving very, very, very much towards the independent side, which could be a danger, because I know people really got mad at me before when I used to say that. I always thought Ron Paul was a guy put out there. He's a Freemason yo-yo playing a game to deflect attention, direct attention to him, basically, where it's not going to do any good, because he's just going to talk the talk. He's not going to freaking dismantle the Federal Reserve. The guy couldn't even fight back about, losing a primary, for crying out loud, when he was flat out proven he was getting ripped off left and right on votes. But, when it comes down to it, you got to think of it this way. Don't be in the dumps about, sometimes I am too, in the dumps about some of this shit, because I'm thinking, man, how many idiots are there out there going to vote for Hillary or Jeb Bush? I mean, I can't stand any of them. I mean, Hillary's so bad I might even vote for Jeb Bush, but I'm like, I don't know if I could, to tell you the truth. I don't think I could vote for either one of them. Which, in effect, is throwing away my vote, even if it freaking counts electronically, which I think they rigged this shit as it is. But you know what it's coming down to? You're just going to have to freaking break the rules, man. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the hell to tell you, man. If we were all hardcore entrepreneurs that freaking work with tools and hammers and stuff like that and only use silver as money, that'd be the end of the shit for these guys. That'd be the end of Wall Street. The end of the freaking politicians. The end of them, period. So, there's hope on the horizon, because there is a sweeping wave of independence that's on the nation all over. But, I don't know how long I don't know how it's going to be. I think it's going to be deflected again the same way, because back at the turn of the last century, when Woodrow Wilson was elected, guess what happened? How did he get elected? How did he defeat the independent-minded people that didn't want the Federal Reserve and all that type of stuff? I mean, I think there was some more hardcore people back then that were trying to stop this stuff, and they couldn't, because the vote got divided between Taft and Teddy Roosevelt, right? They know what they're doing, man. They know what they're doing. They were more hardcore. I think the American people were more hardcore back then. And you know what happened? Most people then, they says, well, shit, they passed this, they passed that. Well, I'm going to go out west and be a farmer. I'll be independent. What are they going to do to me out here? Screw them, it's not changed that much. But, stick to your guns. That's all I got to say, man. Literally and, also vocally, because the more we keep the pressure on the assholes that keep playing up to Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. I mean, Jeb Bush looks like the lesser of two evils, but I'm not going for that. I'm not going for either one of them, to tell you the truth. They better not put that guy up for freaking Republican, because I'll do just like I did the last time. I'm going to vote for Libertarian or something. Screw both those stupid parties. But, I always find out I'm less than 1%. Everybody talks they're going to vote for Libertarian or some other party, but nobody does, And I don't want to say, but I think, I'm thinking about, why feed the system, man? Why feed the system at all? These guys are a bunch of yo-yos. So, stay free and independent, but don't just think it. Be it. Be it all the way. Fight the powers.